I was 19 when I received the acceptance letter, a prestigious art institute in Chicago, full scholarship, the kind of offer that most students only dream of. I had already imagined the apartment I'd rent, the canvases I'd fill, the life I'd build. And then Emily called me from the upstairs hallway. She was 13, standing at the top of the stairs, holding a letter of her own. She'd won a regional science award, first place. Her eyes sparkled as she talked about becoming a doctor, about saving lives, about how proud Mom and Dad would be if they were still here. That night, as she fell asleep with her certificate tucked under her pillow, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my acceptance letter. The silence in that tiny house was deafening, but the decision wasn't hard. Not really. I deferred the scholarship, told the school I needed a year, then another. Then I stopped reapplying altogether. By 21, I was managing shifts at a diner by day and stocking shelves at the pharmacy by night. I picked up freelance copy editing jobs online during lunch breaks. Anything to cover Emily's books, her prep courses, her first semester at undergrad. I told myself it was temporary, that I could always go back. But the years kept slipping by, and Emily kept climbing higher. While she lived in dorms with exposed brick and espresso machines, I rented a basement studio apartment with a single window and no insulation. She wore scrubs during internships. I wore name tags that said, "Happy to help." But I never resented her. Not then. Every call where she told me about her grades, her lab partners, her dreams of medical school, I clapped, I cheered, I reminded her to eat. We had a pact, after all. I'd hold the umbrella until the storm passed. I never expected sunshine for myself. I framed her first acceptance letter to med school and hung it above my desk, the desk that doubled as my kitchen counter. I paid the deposit before she even asked. She cried on the phone that night, told me I'd changed her life. I believed her. The auditorium smelled like old wood polish and borrowed pride. A sea of black caps shimmered beneath the lights as violins played something hopeful. I stood near the back with my phone in hand, fingers frozen over the camera button. Emily was third in her class, summa cum laude, honors stole. She stepped onto the stage like it had been built for her. When the dean read her name, the crowd erupted. I caught the tail end of her smile before the camera flash blinded me. My hands shook as I recorded the moment I'd worked years to help create. My name wasn't in the program. That wasn't surprising. After the ceremony, the crowd funneled outside. Families gathered for group photos beneath the white and gold balloon arch. I spotted Emily being swarmed by classmates, professors, friends I didn't recognize. She wore a white dress under her gown. Sleek. Designer. I'd bought it last month, shifting 2 credit card payments to afford it. She didn't know that part. She just texted me a link and said, "This one." I hovered near the refreshment table, pretending to be invested in a plate of limp mini sandwiches. A distant cousin raised a plastic cup in my direction, but no one else seemed to notice I was there. The toast started without me. "To Emily," her best friend declared, lifting a flute of cheap champagne. "The smartest, strongest, most unstoppable woman we know." Everyone cheered. I clapped too, smiled until my cheeks ached. My own cup of ginger ale remained untouched. A few feet away, my mother's sister was telling someone that Emily did it all on her own. "So driven," she said. "Didn't take a single break." She looked right past me as she said it. Later that evening, as the crowd thinned and Emily posed for one last photo with her diploma, she finally turned to me. "Thanks for coming," she said, already scrolling through her phone. "Sorry, it's been crazy. I'll text you later." I nodded. Of course. I went home alone that night, took off my thrifted heels, peeled off my dollar store lashes, and sat on the edge of my bed, still in my party dress. She had become everything I'd worked for, and I had disappeared. Emily's graduation was the last time she hugged me without looking at her watch. 2 weeks later, she moved into a high-rise with concierge service, valet parking, and a view of the skyline that came with rent I couldn't imagine paying. I helped her move, of course. Hauled boxes up 3 flights of stairs when the elevator broke. She thanked me with a Starbucks gift card and a distracted, "You're a lifesaver." She called less after that. Her texts came in late, usually after I followed up first. I told myself she was busy adjusting, new residency, new responsibilities. But the truth was colder than that. She didn't need me anymore. Not the way she used to. The girl who once called crying before every exam now replied to my check-ins with a thumbs-up emoji. When I asked about visiting, she always said she was just slammed with shifts, even though I saw tagged photos of her out at rooftop brunches and wine bars. Home visits became performance art, smiles that didn't reach her eyes, stories told like she was the main character of a show none of us were smart enough to follow. She brought expensive wine no one liked and spent most of her time on the phone. At first, I tried harder, sent her care packages, painted a piece for her new apartment, a soft blue abstract with gold leaf accents. She never hung it up, said it didn't match her new aesthetic. Meanwhile, I was still answering phones at a cable company's call center, where people screamed about outages and hung up mid-sentence. I painted on weekends, mostly in my tiny kitchen because the light hit just right near the sink. I never complained. Not once. Not when my fridge broke and I had to store milk in a cooler. Not when my rent increased and I skipped lunch for a week. Not even when I saw her post a photo with the caption, "Self-made and unstoppable." I just kept clapping from the cheap seats until the clapping stopped. It was supposed to be a simple dinner, Mom's old recipes, store-bought dessert, a chance to feel like a family again, even if just for an evening. I lit candles, set the table, even wore makeup for the first time in weeks. Emily arrived late, of course, new purse slung over her shoulder, silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. She kissed the air beside my cheek and sat down like royalty slumming it at a commoner's table. Dinner started with polite conversation, her residency updates, a vague mention of a potential fellowship, casual name drops I couldn't keep up with. When the conversation finally lulled, I spoke. "I'm applying for an art grant," I said cautiously. "There's a program downtown that supports emerging voices. They help with studio space, mentorship. It's competitive, but I figured, why not try?" For a moment, the room held its breath. Then Emily laughed, a short, sharp exhale through her nose. "Leah," she said, shaking her head like I'd told her I was becoming an astronaut. "You're too smart to waste time on fantasies." I blinked. "It's not a fantasy, it's an application." She sipped her wine. "I just mean, some people weren't meant for that world. It's ruthless, cutthroat. You've always been, sensitive." I didn't respond. I didn't trust my voice. She leaned back in her chair. "There's a reason you never went after this stuff. Maybe deep down, you know it's not for you. Not everyone's built for success, Leah, and that's okay. Some people are just meant to stay steady. Average." She meant average. The room went quiet. Even the old clock on the wall seemed to pause. I stood, carefully folding my napkin and placing it on the table. "I think I'll call it a night." "You're being dramatic," she muttered, already glancing at her phone. "No," I said, walking to the door without looking back. "I'm just finally listening." I didn't cry until I got home, and even then, it didn't last long. Because somewhere between her words and my silence, something else had surfaced. Not grief, resolve. 12 years of my life lived in quarterly reports and color-coded project boards. That's how long I gave to Halden and Price. I joined straight out of grad school when the company was still in its awkward adolescence. Too small to compete with the big players, too proud to admit it. I didn't mind. I saw potential where others saw chaos. I built the strategic planning division from scratch. There were no templates, no precedent, just late nights and the unwavering belief that structure could save anything. I worked weekends without being asked, learned to drink black coffee, memorized our client retention rate down to the decimal. Derek wasn't always the CEO. Back then, he was just another ambitious manager with something to prove. We'd shared office pizza during budget marathons, and once, when a presentation crashed mid-pitch, I rebuilt it live without blinking. He told me afterward I had ice in my veins. I took it as a compliment. I didn't take many vacations, didn't start a family, but I had something that felt close, respect, relevance. Then 6 months ago, I noticed a lump. 2 weeks later, I had a diagnosis. Stage 2 breast cancer, treatable, aggressive. Everything after that blurred. Doctor's visits, cold rooms, endless forms. I told HR the day after my biopsy results. Derek scheduled a video call for 5 minutes. "We're so sorry to hear this," he said, glancing at another screen. "Obviously, take the time you need. We'll press pause on the promotion talk for now, but when you're back, we'll pick up where we left off." I nodded, too stunned to protest. The role, Vice President of Strategic Growth, was already outlined, my name practically on the org chart. "Take care of yourself," he added before logging off. I did. Chemo came with every cliché: hair loss, nausea, nights I couldn't lift a spoon. But I fought, not just to survive, but to return, because I believed the door was still open. I didn't know someone else was already being measured for the frame. Sloan smiled like someone who'd never been told no. She was 28, former consultant, big on buzzwords and bolder on confidence. She introduced herself with a LinkedIn-ready handshake and a crisp, expensive blazer. I'd been back 3 days when she called me a legacy asset in a meeting. I wasn't sure if she meant it as a compliment. Derek acted like she was a revelation. "Fresh energy," he said, "visionary instincts." He'd paired her with my old team, the one I'd mentored, grown, protected. They were polite but confused, especially when she started presenting ideas I'd workshopped months before treatment. She unveiled a new 3-phase growth framework in her first leadership meeting. I'd called it Scalable Momentum in a strategy deck last fall. Same language, same slide structure. The only thing missing was my name in the corner. I made a note. In one-on-ones, I tried to re-engage, offer context, remind Derek of our old rhythm. "She's just getting settled," he told me, eyes flicking to the hallway. "Let's give Sloan room to breathe, yeah? Don't want to step on her momentum." "Right, wouldn't want to disturb the air." I nodded, bit the inside of my cheek until it tasted like metal. Sloan started holding alignment huddles every morning at 8 a.m. sharp. There was a ring light on her desk and always a cup of something oat milk adjacent. She was all polish. Quotes from Harvard Business Review, metaphors about rockets and runways. People listened because they didn't want to look out of touch. I listened because I wanted to know exactly how far she'd go. She wasn't stupid. She was strategic. And somewhere in those morning stand-ups, she started planting roots in the position I'd nurtured for over a decade. The desk I once used was now hers. The ideas I bled for now had her initials on the project folder. And the man who once called me irreplaceable? He was too busy clapping for her to notice I'd already stopped clapping back. There's a certain peace in paperwork, not the kind with pastel tabs and Pinterest aesthetics. The real kind, the kind that stacks neatly on a desk and can't lie when the people around you do. After the 4th meeting, where Sloan casually presented a rebranded version of my original 3-year growth model, I opened a new folder on my desktop, Contingency, Private. I started with emails, archived threads from before my leave, dates, attachments, calendar invites, where Derek confirmed the promotion track. I dug up the slide deck I'd presented to the board last year, the one with my initials in the metadata. Next came performance reviews. 3 years of exceeds expectations, glowing comments, quotes from clients, every KPI, every quarter, documented. Then the memos, the ones I'd written, reviewed, and saved before chemo brain made remembering a challenge. I'd always been diligent, organized. I just never thought I'd need to weaponize it. After work, I stayed late, printed files, labeled them, even sorted by category, strategic contributions, timeline promises, IP documentation. The copier jammed once. I fixed it myself. I requested a copy of my employee file from HR routine, I told them. Just checking in post-leave. I even pulled the employee handbook, Flip to the section on internal promotion policies, sick leave protections, medical accommodation clauses, red underlines, sticky tabs, highlights. The more I dug, the clearer the timeline became. I had laid the groundwork. I had been promised. They hadn't paused anything. They'd simply handed my future to someone with better lighting and no medical history. But unlike Sloan, I didn't need to sparkle. I just needed to be thorough. It started with a knock, subtle, quick, like a question asked through a wall. "Got a minute?" It was Devin, my old project analyst. Sharp, quiet, not known for drama. He closed my office door carefully. "I'm not trying to stir things," he said, "but I thought you should know something's off." He sat, glanced at the window, then pulled out his phone and slid it across the desk. An internal thread, dated 4 months ago. Subject line, Transition Planning, Q3 Strategic Lead Assignment. Attached, a draft of the organizational announcement naming Sloan as Vice President of Strategic Growth. The date on the file? Exactly 2 weeks after my second round of chemo. My name wasn't mentioned once. "They said it was just temporary," Devin added. "But they had this ready months ago." More came after that, a quiet stream of messages. Slack DMS whispered check-ins in the kitchen. "I'm sorry, Elena. This isn't right." "She doesn't even understand the client segmentation model. You built that from scratch." "We asked Derek if you were coming back. He said, 'We'll see.'" One brave soul forwarded a Teams call summary where Derek referred to Sloan as the new face of growth. The call was dated 2 months before I even returned to work. HR had been kept entirely out of the decision. I confirmed it in a polite offhand chat with Madison, the HR coordinator who'd always been kind to me. "We didn't process any promotion paperwork while you were out," she said, blinking. "That would have triggered a compliance review. Wait, are you saying?" I smiled gently. "Just curious, that's all." She frowned. The truth was forming now, piece by piece. They hadn't waited. They hadn't paused. They'd replaced. And they'd done it quietly, hoping the woman in chemo wouldn't notice. They were wrong. The gallery smelled like fresh paint and old possibility. I stood in the corner, dress borrowed from a friend, watching strangers pause in front of my canvases. Some leaned closer. Others just stared. I didn't interrupt. I wanted to see their faces when they saw mine, my truth, layered in brush strokes and silence. The exhibit was called Inheritance. A series of 10 mixed media pieces built over 18 months of pain, reflection, and something else I hadn't dared name until now, rage. The centerpiece was 12 square feet of canvas titled The Cost of a White Coat. It showed a faceless woman in grayscale, her spine bowed under the weight of a pristine figure above her, arms lifted in worship, her pedestal cracked at the base. The buried woman's hands were outstretched, palms open, fingers raw. People stood longest in front of that one. A couple whispered to each other, unsure if they should be moved or ashamed. A journalist asked to interview me on the spot. A local art buyer left a card and a generous offer. But I wasn't thinking about money. I was thinking about the nights I skipped dinner so Emily could afford another practice exam. The times I clapped through her wins while standing knee-deep in my own dreams, buried. This was mine, all of it. The story I was never allowed to tell, now framed, mounted, and lit with gallery lights. No apologies, no explanations, just the truth. The opening night ended with a modest reception, wine in plastic cups, polite applause, someone asking if I'd ever studied formally. I smiled. "No," I said. "I was busy paying someone else's tuition." They laughed like it was a joke. I didn't correct them. The phone rang while I was scrubbing oil paint from under my nails. Emily. The name flashed on my screen for the first time in 4 months. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hey," she said, her voice clipped, breathless. "I need to talk to you." "No, hello. No, how are you?" "What's going on?" I asked, flat. Her words came in a rush. Her hospital department was under review. Malpractice allegations, misfiled records. One of her patients had posted something that caught legal attention. Internal Affairs was digging through everyone's history. They're pulling files, Leah. Personal references. I need a character letter. You know how I've always been driven. Empathetic. Focused. Empathetic. Focused. The same sister who once told me I was meant to stay average. I listened in silence, letting her unravel. She spoke for 3 straight minutes, each sentence growing more frantic. She needed the letter by end of week, said she'd owe me one. The irony almost made me laugh. When she finally stopped talking, I let the quiet sit, long enough for her to feel it. "Elena, are you there?" "I'm here," I said calmly. And then I said nothing. I let the silence say what years of quiet loyalty never had. She started to speak again, but I hung up. Some debts aren't paid in signatures. Some apologies come too late. The symposium hall buzzed with that particular kind of reverence reserved for artists who had suffered visibly enough to be respected. I was one of them now, a last-minute addition to the panel, introduced as an emerging voice in emotionally driven, visual narrative. I stood behind the podium, clutching my notes, my palms dry, not from nerves, but from years of being unheard. I'd already lived through worse. The lights dimmed slightly as I began. "I want to talk about sacrifice," I said, about how some people hold umbrellas while others dance in the sun. I didn't name her. I didn't need to. I told the story in brushstrokes, about working double shifts to send someone else to school, about quiet dinners, shrinking rooms, and words that sting deeper than silence. "There's a cost to disappearing so someone else can shine," I said, "but sometimes the ones who vanish reappear on their own terms, with paint on their hands and truth in their work." When I finished, there was a beat of quiet, then applause. Long, sustained, rising like a tide. A woman in the second row wiped tears. A man near the aisle stood to clap. Afterward, they posted the clip on the symposium's website. Then someone tweeted it. Within days, the speech had gone viral under hashtags like "the cost of sacrifice" and "unseen sisters." Thousands of comments, people sharing their own stories of being stepped on, overlooked, taken for granted. And then, inevitably, someone made the connection, a medical student from Emily's alma mater. "She's talking about Emily Kay, right? The one who always bragged about being self-made but had a sister who paid her way?" The internet doesn't need breadcrumbs. It needs only motive. By the end of the week, Emily's name was trending, and not the way she was used to. It started with a viral side-by-side, a still from my gallery piece, the cost of a white coat, next to an old photo of Emily's graduation. The posture was identical. Then came the Reddit threads. Old classmates sharing stories of Emily's arrogance, her condescending remarks, the way she dismissed others, especially women, in group projects. One nurse said she'd refused to help a colleague because some people just aren't cut out for success. That phrase hit differently now. Articles followed. Viral artist speech sparks debate on medical elitism. When support turns to silence, unpacking sibling sacrifice. And then came the sponsors. Emily's glossy, curated image began to unravel. A health brand quietly removed her from a campaign. A podcast episode featuring her disappeared from Spotify. Her private practice website went down for maintenance. Through it all, I said nothing. I kept painting, answered interview requests with polite declines. This wasn't revenge, it was revelation. She had chosen pride over gratitude. Now she was learning that silence isn't always protection. Sometimes it's preparation. She arrived just before closing. The gallery was quiet, all soft lighting and fresh white walls, the scent of varnish still lingering near the back. I was adjusting a hanging wire when I heard the door swing open with too much force. Emily. Her hair was messy, her makeup smudged, not from fashion, from unraveling. She wore the same trench coat I'd once complimented in better days. Now it looked like it was wearing her. "You've ruined my career," she spat, voice sharp, eyes already glossy. "Do you even understand what you've done?" I didn't flinch. I didn't need to. She walked past a display of limited-run prints, her heels clicking like accusations. "Do you think that speech was brave? That painting? You painted me." "No," I said evenly. "I painted what you did." She scoffed, spinning toward one of the larger canvases, the apology that never came. A shadowy figure with a stitched-shut mouth. "I worked for everything I have." I raised an eyebrow. "Did you?" Her mouth twitched. "You've humiliated me," she hissed, stepping closer. "You made me look like a monster." I stared at her, calm as still water. "I didn't make you anything, Emily. I just stopped covering for you. You were supposed to be my sister." I nodded. I was. The room settled into silence. Paintings lined the walls like witnesses. And for the first time, I saw her not as the golden child or the ungrateful prodigy, but as someone whose crown was cracking. She looked at me like she didn't recognize what I'd become. Maybe she didn't. "You ruined my career," she whispered again. I stepped closer. "And you ruined my dreams. I just painted the truth." For a moment, she didn't speak. Her jaw trembled. She reached out to steady herself against a bench, and then she sat down like her legs had finally given up. "I didn't mean to," she said, barely audible. "Back then, I was young, stupid. I didn't know what it cost you." I stayed standing. "I told myself you were fine," she continued, "that you didn't really want it, that you liked helping. It made it easier." I didn't interrupt. Her voice cracked. "But I see it now. What I took. What I turned you into in my head to justify it." She looked up at me, eyes bloodshot. "I don't know how to fix it." "You can't," I said quietly. Tears streamed down her face. Her posture wilted, no longer angry, no longer proud, just small. Broken in a way I couldn't patch. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I sat across from her, legs crossed, voice steady. "I gave you everything, my savings, my future, my sleep, my dreams." She nodded, trembling. "And I gave you insults." "Yes." Silence settled between us again, this time softer, not accusing. "Just true. I don't need revenge, Emily." She looked up, hope flickering. "I have peace." That broke her. Her sobs filled the gallery, echoing off the walls like old grief being evicted. I didn't comfort her. I didn't hold her hand. I just sat with her while the weight of truth finally landed where it belonged. Not on my back, but hers. The studio smelled like turpentine and triumph. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows, casting golden stripes across easels and paint-splattered stools. A teenage girl in the back was frowning at a half-finished portrait, brush in hand, eyebrows furrowed in the same way mine used to furrow at 23. "Push the blue," I said gently, walking past. "Let it clash before it settles." She nodded, grateful, determined. My mentorship program had started with 5 students. Now we had 20. Most of them couldn't afford canvas without a scholarship. Some had never been told they were good at anything before they picked up a brush here. We painted, we listened, we unlearned the lie that art was a luxury only the privileged could afford to pursue. My latest collection, Unpaid Debts, had just sold out at the gallery downtown. 12 pieces, 12 stories, no names, just layered truth in oil, texture, and shadow. Buyers had offered double for some pieces. I declined. They weren't for flipping, they were for remembering. After class, I took a walk through the city. Quiet, slow, no destination. That's when I saw it. The bookstore on 8th and Lyle. Display window curated for impact. Among the memoirs and celebrity cookbooks was a navy blue hardcover titled What I Lost. Author, Emily Kay. The subtitle read, A Journey Through Pride, Pressure, and the Price of Silence. I didn't flinch. I didn't freeze. I just stood there, coat buttoned, wind in my hair, staring at the name I once carried like a weight, then like a wound, and finally, like nothing at all. I didn't buy it. I didn't need to. The reckoning had never belonged to me. That was hers to carry, to explain, to relive on paper the way I had relived it on canvas. People would read it. Some might praise her honesty. Others would roll their eyes. That part didn't matter anymore. I turned and walked on, passing the window without a second glance. Not out of malice, but resolution. Peace doesn't need applause. Closure doesn't need a witness. Sometimes the best endings don't echo. They exhale.